everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started this evening. So many bright, happy faces. I think it's good lighting shining down. Everybody has a halo. I'm so happy to have you here. We're happy to have you here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
The acoustics? Okay, my name is Marie Tayard. I am your moderator tonight as well as panelist. And I will introduce everyone here, but I just wanted to, again, say a hearty welcome to Artist Transformation from Concept to Craft. And tonight, I just want you to feel like you're with family, that this is going to be a conversation, a discussion. You can shed some tears if you need to, laugh. Just speak out. This is our time to really get to know one another and fellowship around this wonderful gift that we have of creativity. Just a little bit of background. This is the Workhouse where you are. Isn't this an amazing space? Everything that you see here that's kind of around the edges and all throughout this space is for sale. The Workhouse is a venue that is actually an artist co-op. Is that a good way to say it? Yeah, well, artists have special areas where they create their art and display them for sale, and you can come in during business hours and just see the artists at work, like they remind me of shoemaker elves, so I'm trying to say, doing their thing. And there are also a number of classes that are offered here throughout the month, every month. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the website for the Workhouse, please do so. And there's also a kiosk right there, a big yellow one that says classes. You can swirl it around and just find something that you would be interested in trying or perfecting or sharing with others, which would be really great. So again, I am Marie Tayard. That's how you pronounce the last name. I am a literary artist. I am a concept photographer. I am an art historian, and I'm also an art professor. I teach art as philosophy and religion at Kilns College here in Bend. Kilns is a graduate school specializing in theology and mission, and we have 3 degree programs. The first is in social justice, the next innovation and leadership, and the third is in theology and culture, which is officially launching next fall. But my class, Art as Philosophy and Religion, has been a soft launch that started just this past September. And for those who might be interested in one-off classes like auditing, I'm starting another class called Art as Argument this January. And we'll be going through modern, contemporary, and emerging art forms, how they are used to advance and persuade different arguments and points of view. I have some cards back there on the table that if you can take my cards as an artist or take my cards as an educator and follow up with me one way or another. So that's enough about me. I am so excited just how this event came to be. For that Art as Philosophy and Religion class, I met this fine gentleman at a conference last summer on C.S. Lewis, focusing on the space trilogies. I attended 2 of his breakout sessions and was blown away. He happens to live in Eugene, and I'm from Bend, and I'm saying, we gotta find a way to get you up there, and that was before I even had an opportunity to be an instructor. And as soon as I was recruited to teach a course, guess whose book I'm using, and guess who I'm having as a guest speaker. And so this is Terry Glaspie. He is a writer. He is a writer of 12 books or more. He is an editor. He is a creative mentor, and just an all-around great guy. And has a history of editing great books, of finding the wonderful narrative stories behind some of the well-known artists of our time, Jane Austen, C.S. Lewis, Tolkien. He is also an instructor, is teaching at New Hope College in Eugene, a class specifically on C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. He was recruited for that, high demand guy, and I'll let him tell you more about himself as we do individual introductions. But next, I have Amy Turner, who I love this woman and her spirit. She is the founder of a social enterprise, a social movement called the Kurtz Tribe. She'll tell you more about that, but just by way of introduction, from me, I find her to be probably one of the most eloquent artists I've ever met. She specializes in intuitional painting and artistry, where she guides individuals through accessing their heart and their spirit through the creative process. And the thing that I love most, and the reason why I think she's such a special person to serve on this panel, is that she talks and engages so much with the physicality of the artistic creative process, what it means when you're actually using your hands, you're smelling the paint, you're engaging with others, you're interacting with the actual medium that you're using, and you're recording what your heart and your body are telling you as you create. And I just think that as she shares a little bit more about her experiences tonight, it's going to really enrich you. And then finally, I just have to stop myself because I just want to go sit in her lap. She's so loving and kind and gentle. Lisa Marie Sipe, one of, if not the finest encaustic artist in the United States, and certainly in the Pacific Northwest. She is actually one of the artists here at the Workhouse, which it was kind of coincidental because when I was putting together this workshop, I wanted her on the panel, and when I was looking for a venue, this venue became available, and I said, hey, I'm gonna have Lisa, she doesn't know it yet, but this will be great because you can see her corner. She has the top billing right there. As soon as you walk in, you encounter her work. And she's my favorite artist here, mixed media artist in Ben. And what I love most about her work is how it's so delicate, how she takes found objects and creates a visual story around them. That these objects, just driftwood, photographs that she dips in wax, she creates amazing forms, and they're so fluid and full of movement and vibrant, and they take on their own voice through her hand. And so I invite you to look at her art when we have a break or afterwards. And so these are our three panelists, Terry Glaspie, Amy Turner, Lisa Marie Sipe, and me, Marie Théard. And so we're going to kick it off tonight just to give you an idea of format. I have just a few starter questions to get us going, and we're going to have a conversation. And so this is your invitation to eavesdrop. And you can be a fly on the wall, a spider under the table, or just jump right in and, be the mouse that takes a cookie and then we can't get rid of at the end of the night because you're still talking. We would love that. There are refreshments at the end. Those under 21, refrain from the adult beverages, please. There's a restroom right here. Feel free to help yourself if you need to avail yourself. There's some water right around the corner with cups as well, pretzels, everything. If you need to replenish, please feel free to do so. It's just a comfortable evening, so we don't want you to feel like you're, parched the whole night because you're scared to move around. But so enough of that. I want to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves. What I have asked each of our guests to do tonight is to share their artist's trajectory, what it is you actually do as an artist, or hope to do as an artist, specifically your medium, any kind of themes or context that you have adopted as your as it were, French, like my last name. But just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get going about that.
Can we hear about you?
Oh, sure. Didn't you hear enough about me already?
As an artist.
Yes.
About your art.
Oh, my art. Okay, well, yeah, since I have the mic, I'll just go ahead. So it's interesting. I mentioned that I'm an art historian. I studied art history in undergraduate, and Italian Renaissance painting was my concentration. And then I went to graduate school for public policy and fine arts to do arts advocacy, possibly run a nonprofit organization, just be involved in art, the intersection of art and policy and justice. And after I got out of graduate school, I got hit with these student loans, and I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get a real job. So I started working in consulting to nonprofits, right, in the area of strategic planning. And along that path, I was recruited to work for Apple Computer, where I did strategic planning in the IT group, which was the best place to be. And we're going to talk a little bit about spirituality. I don't want anybody to be offended. This is just an inclusive environment, and spirituality as it relates to you as an artist. I am a Christian, and so forgive the Christianese, it just comes out of me, but I was in a meeting in Apple, and I felt, just this unction of this, if you stay here, you'll do well, but I have something more for you. And I just felt like it was the voice of God saying to me, if you, stay on this path, you'll do well, but you want to go for a ride, buckle up. So I quit my job. And a nice salary, and I gotta tell you, as much as I love the job, the thing that I miss the most are the business travel miles. And I felt that God was calling me to leave the corporate environment to pursue writing. So I started fiction writing and literary nonfiction writing, had written a couple books, and started working on this book on the narrative of creation and temptation through the voice of Eve. It took me 6 years to write it. Finished it and did not get the reception that I had hoped to receive, and just kind of wonder what was going on. I left my job, left my miles, what am I doing? So I went to Iceland, went to a concert there to see an artist, Bjork, who I'm devoting an entire week of my classes to, and was so inspired. And I had moved to Bend during the process and still doing some consulting to make money, still writing. But after that trip to Iceland, I was inspired to turn my book into a production. That voice again was telling me, your book is not a book, that's why it's not going anywhere, it's a production. So for the last 4 years, I've been working on a production called Radiance 369, A Sacred Experience, and it is based on the creation and temptation narratives through the voice of Eve. While working on that, I collaborated with a number of artists, and I just started having these visions about imagery that I wanted to incorporate in that production. And I wanted blue hair and purple lipstick and green cheeks, and the artists, the photographers were like, I don't get it, I don't see it. And so I just made myself up, went in my bathroom and started taking selfies with my telephone to my iPhone, of course, to show them what I had envisioned. And I kind of liked my photography even better than what I was doing with them. And it grew into what I call myself now, which is a concept portrait photographer. So for the last couple years, I have over 40 artistic concepts, and I do photograph others, but primarily I just, throw candy sprinkles on my face, wood chips, whatever I can find, and develop these concepts. So I'm a literary artist, a concept photographer. Photography just happens to be the way that I express the concepts, but I'm more of a concept artist, if that makes sense. And along the way, that graduate school education and Apple experience has kind of launched me into my role right now in Bend as an instructor as well as an academician. So, okay, enough. That's all you're gonna hear.
Okay, thanks, Marie. First of all, a shout out to the dudes in the room. Thank you, that I'm not the only one, because, so excellent. We represent the male side of this here. So, my artistic work is done with a computer keyboard on a screen. I'm a writer. The thing about being a writer is it's a disgustingly tidy form of art. You guys get really, you get your hands dirty, you probably get your clothes messy, and when you're done, you're working with elements, and I'm kind of jealous of that. And so I'd love to hear some of you talk a little bit about that. Since we're talking about art as transformation tonight, I kind of come at this from two angles. As someone who's a writer, as I said, it's a different kind of an art form, but I have personally been just so nourished by art, from all different kinds of art throughout the ages, the art in visual arts, music, literature, film. Nothing really feeds my soul in the same way that art does. And so I've done a lot of thinking about how that works in my life, how that is transformative. And that kind of led me to begin to look into the lives of people who were producing art and see what could I learn from their stories, and that might help me to understand how the final creative product that we get to look at comes really out of their lives, out of their ideas, their philosophies. In my particular book that's on the table back there, 75 Masterpieces, is all art particularly from the Christian heritage. And I don't do that because I think that's the only valid art or anything like that. But it was an interesting way to say, look at what Christianity looks like today. And as someone who, like Marie, would identify myself as a Christian, I'm kind of embarrassed about a lot of the expressions of Christianity that are in the world today. And I kind of go, I don't really want to identify with that. But you know what? I'm really okay with identifying with Bach and with Handel and with U2. I'm okay with Caravaggio and Michelangelo and the great artists throughout history who have found ways to express the things that are deepest in their souls in a way that helps me see and understand my life in a different way. So, anyway, you guys are doing the real thing. I'm just talking about the ideas behind it. But somebody's got to do it, right?
Yeah.
Well, your art is also messy. You could probably end up with carpal tunnel by the time.
That's true. And if you've ever actually seen, like, when I do my first draft, as Anne Lamott said, the key to good writing is don't be afraid to write a shitty first draft. And I have created many of those. So maybe that's my visceral thing.
Yeah. I would have to say, I don't know, is this working?
No.
No? Okay. Should we try this? I might be too far away, is what I wonder.
Hello?
That's working.
Okay, good. I would have to say there's lots of craft in your writing, in that, I mean, you're crafting with words. There's lots of putting it out there, moving it around, covering it up, deleting, adding again. So there is a lot that goes in. I write some as well, and so you don't get off. As not being called a messy artist, because there's certainly crafting going on. So hello everyone. I'm Amy Turner, and I'm both an artist and then also the founder of the Courage Tribe. I feel that, well, as far as the trajectory, when I look back in hindsight, it said hindsight's 2020, and I can see that when I was a small child, 4 or 5 years old, and I'm the youngest of a mixed family that ends up with 7 kids. I'm the youngest of everybody. And so I'm really patient. You're young, lots too? Of 6, woohoo! It's crazy. But, I'd be tagged along at the grocery store, and, we had Fred Meyer where we lived, and I would be like drooling, even as a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, over the Crayola art kits and the caddies, that had all the different kinds. And the only thing I ever got was the 24 box of crayons, and then the hodgepodge passed down, through the school or whatever it was. And I was not encouraged to be an artist. I was encouraged to hurry up and come along and, keep in tow with all the other ducklings, who had many other things to do. But one thing that I was encouraged so incredibly by is my mother. And she didn't know how to do this herself, and so she didn't always show me, but she told me over and over and over again, you can be anything you want to be, Amy. You can do anything you want to do. And I thought, that's great. And as I came into my adulthood, I was like, I don't know what there is beyond a school bus driver, a dentist, a doctor, a lawyer, a store clerk, a teacher. I think that sums it up. There are no other things to do in this world besides one of those, or secretary work or something. So I had no idea, and not a lot of models. And through my life, I've always sought them out, and little by little have been gathering and growing and gathering and growing, and little bits of practice here, little bits of practice there. And then when I was 31, that was a year before my first child. I'm 40 now, I'm not afraid of age, mine or anyone else's. I realized in a do-it-yourselfer attitude that my then husband and we had a house with big walls that needed to be filled that we just moved into. And I thought, I can do it, I can make something. And had never, ever, ever thought of myself as an artist. Always someone interested in the arts. I could be critical, either for or against, but I could speak critically about art. But I didn't think I had a creative bone in my body anywhere. And so then I go to try to pick a pencil and a little piece of scratch paper, and I couldn't draw a lemon. So I thought, oh, okay, I was right. But I love color. And my then husband gave me paints and brushes for Christmas. It took me a few months to slow down long enough to use them. And the very first moment, I have it even in my bathroom, I made my first painting. It's about this big, I don't remember the dimensions. And I put on a blue, with a nice bright royal blue with the paint and the brush. And I remember as I made that first stroke on, and I could see the canvas coming through and the paint and the variations, even where it was thick and thin, it was the feelings of falling in love. And I was almost, kind of overcome and trembling a little bit, like, okay. I didn't think I would have that reaction. And I did. And so I, set forth to kind of paint things I thought that would be good, or I would have an idea in my mind and then try to paint that. For me, for lots of artists, that works very well. For me, that did not work so well. And what I found is that the more that I tried to plan a painting, the worse that it was. And I started to learn that I could, paintings, as in life, there's always a parallel, don't happen in just a straight line, don't happen in a one go. And for some, it does, but not for me. And so I started making room for that to happen, and I would start covering up and over, and sometimes I would pull out my Sharpies, and I'd be mad at, this, that, or the other, or scared, or whatever it was, and then I would go back in with my paints again, and cover them up, maybe respond, because I didn't want those to show. And it would be, but I wanted the experience of having them, having it on there, knowing that it was there in the layers and coming back. And I didn't know that what I was doing was called intuitive painting, and intuition is very simply put. It's not some woo thing. It's not something that you can go and have read. Intuition means inner knowing. So it doesn't mean that you read it from a book. It doesn't mean that you watched your mother, brother, father, sister, etc. do it. It means that it's something that you know from inside of you. Now, people have different languages to describe these types of things. They maybe have a very articulate language, maybe they don't. But a lot of this comes up when we give space and a platform to be able to hear what's going on inside of us. And every single person equally has something to add to the world. It may not be what they want to add, it may not be what they think they should add, or someone else thinks that they should add, but we all have something. And so I started discovering and painting more and more, loving color, loving design, decorating and things. And so I would bring things up and keep painting over and over and come back to them, sometimes over weeks, sometimes over months, sometimes over years, that I would come back to something later on and add a new piece to it, until I decided that I was making a little thing here and then a little thing here, enough that it was just a small enough back and forth, it doesn't matter. And the amount of lessons that I have learned for myself, the amount of growth that I've had in letting go, of having a voice, of not worrying about perfection, as might be defined by the outside, or even myself, to let go of that, have been priceless. Absolutely and totally priceless. And so my artistic journey is such that before I knew that I was going to found an organization called the Courage Tribe, I had this idea here and here, and I just had to figure out and allow time and process to allow it to come out and be born. And it's, you know, it's still and will always be in a process of iteration and reiteration. So that's a little bit about my artwork. I put it out to show for the first time just about a year ago, and have been showing nonstop ever since. Went through the process of getting giclée prints done, which was a fantastic process. They're never going to look like the original, just so you know, if anybody tries, to save the frustration. And then know that as someone who appreciates prints versus reproductions versus originals. 3 of these are some of my smaller, it's all I had left in my inventory that I brought. And then there's one on my table, the Courage Tribe table up there as well, that the originals are bigger. I think, well, this one it's cropped out, but on the original it has my married last name initial, whereas now I have AT that I put on things. So there's lots of stories through all of the artwork. But yeah.
Thanks, Amy.
So
I'm Lisa Marie Sipe, and unlike Amy, I always knew I was an artist. I just never thought anything different than that. I knew I had to do something creative with my life. Originally it wasn't a fine artist like I am now. I am a mixed media, encaustic and acrylic artist. But when I was little, I'll start like way back so that you can understand how I knew I was an artist. I think I was in preschool, and I remember being super frustrated because I couldn't draw a perfect Christmas tree. You know, like I could do the one side and I couldn't do the other side, so it was perfect. And I don't remember a lot else about that time period, but I remember the frustration of trying to draw the way that I wanted to draw. So those are some of my earlier memories. But all through my life, I knew I wanted to do something in the arts. And when it came time to going to college, I originally thought I wanted to study fashion design. I was super passionate about it. I thought I was going to end up in New York, and as I was studying it, I realized that I hate sewing. And so I could draw all day what I wanted people to wear, but when it came to actually making the garment, I could care less about doing it. So I knew that really wasn't for me. And so I switched majors and still wanted to do something creative and wanted to make a living. So I studied graphic design so that I knew I could find, a job from monster.com, like something very specific. You know, as a fine artist, it's like if you get a fine art degree, it's not like you can go and say, who's hiring a fine artist today? So I was thinking more practically at the time. So I got out of school, worked in graphic design, and I got a job at Shemer Art Center and Museum in Phoenix. And a lot of transformation happened for me there. I took some art classes, which I've done my whole life, but for fun, I started taking art classes again. And with the support of that class, I ended up taking the work that I created there and just putting it out into the world of fine art. And I applied to the Arizona Biennial, the first thing I ever applied to. And so I was like, what the heck, I'll just put it out there. Like, worst thing that happens is like I don't get in. And I didn't think I would get in. And I got in. And it was pretty incredible. It was very validating. And through that, I ended up also getting a show at the Scottsdale Museum of Contemporary Art, which was pretty incredible for me. I'd only really been pursuing fine art for a year or two. So that was another big validation in my life that I was doing the right thing and that I should keep making my work. And I should say that my work is all mostly based in nature. It is always coming from me going outside and having an experience and then coming back into the studio and putting that experience on the piece of art. So that was over 12 years ago that I made that decision to pursue my fine art career. And a couple of years ago, I moved from Phoenix to Bend. And I've just absolutely loved being part of this art community. I feel like the people in Bend are so community focused, and I've made so many more connections with artists in this community than I ever did when I lived in Phoenix. And I was able to be part of a group called the Women's Artist Group of Bend, and Originally, it was run by another woman, and I took it over a couple years ago. And I just really loved working with the other artists in the community and having that collaboration. And we get together and do critiques, and we do artist mentoring groups, and we really try to support each other in our craft. And it's something that I really, really appreciate about being here in this community.
Yay, thank you. Well, this is who we are. So guess what's next?
I would like for each of you, since we have a good sized group, but we have enough time, for you to just give us your name and your artistic medium, if you have one or hope to have one. Just those two things, your name and what kind of art you engage in, if you feel comfortable sharing that with us. That will help us. You can. That will help us as we talk to feel as though we're maybe connecting with other kindred spirits out there.
Hi, I'm Michelle, and I live in Redmond, and I'm a writer, and I do some photography and pastel work. Not enough, because I just finished leading a full-time job within the last year. So, yay, I know, thank you for that. My pocketbook doesn't say the same, but yes. And I'm really looking forward to doing some painting as well, pastels and painting is sort of where I want to move when I have a little more room in my life soon.
Hello, I'm Mark. Most of my work is three-dimensional. I'm a sculptor, I would say, but recently I've been doing some encaustic and some two-dimensional work, and it's interesting. It's an interesting shift going from macro to something that's more immediate. So I do some jewelry work, some furniture work, but all of it's pretty much three-dimensional.
My name's Joreen. I enjoy poetry, and I have altars all over the house. My husband says, shouldn't a dresser be a dresser instead of... So that's my passion.
My name's Kelly, and like they were saying, my creativity started since I was a little girl, and I have different mediums I've always worked with, but I love to dance. That's one form, and right now I'm doing acrylic paintings.
My name is Bonnie. My medium focus right now is clay. I have a 3D background in crafts, and I'm definitely open to doing some painting in the future, hopefully.
I'm Emma. My favorite art medium is probably pens, colored pens, markers. But this last year I've probably gotten more into crafting. I don't know why, just anything really that comes to mind. So that's it.
My name is Paula, and I'm Lisa's mom, so she's my creative.
I'm Jim, and I'm Lisa's husband. But my medium would have to be ones and zeros. I'm a software developer.
I'm Karen, and that's my studio, so I do coffee and beer and random other things.
I'm McKenna, and I draw and also craft, and I'm also a writer.
I'm Cassie. I at Oregon State was doing a studio major and doing a little bit of encaustics and a little bit of mixed media between a little bit of alternative photography. I'm kind of getting into this kind of sculptural hybrid world. And I've just moved back after my graduate program in art therapy, so I'm kind of finding that artist part of myself again. So.
I'm Kathy, and probably my medium is jewelry, mostly white, either sterling and copper.
Glenda Steinbecker. Am I okay sitting in this space?
I didn't know you were back there.
You're
Right? Well, it's kind of hard sitting on those chairs. Okay. So, my name's Barb, and I really appreciate art, but I don't have a whole lot of space in my life to create it. I do have a glass kiln in my garage, and I've taken some classes from Lisa, so I dabble in the encaustic thing, and I just always fashioned myself to be going in that direction, but I never seem to get there. So you're my inspiration, people.
After tonight.
Hi, my name's Holly, and I'm a musician, and I also write quite a bit. I mostly have done nonfiction and poetry, and I like to play with all three as a mixture of things, like perhaps a song about something that I've done, etc.
My name is Jackson. I do writing and photography. I kind of got away from photography for the past year or so. I don't really know exactly why. I just kind of fell out of it. And we actually, the river, we just barely moved here, but we did the river trail, and I took my camera and started doing photos again. And I had no idea why I had stopped doing photography. So now I'm back into photography and writing, and I'm actually going to Central America in 2 weeks, and I'm hoping to do kind of like, I really like storytelling, so I'm hoping to kind of document the lives of a lot of people in Central America. I could be there for 6 weeks or 6 months. I don't really know exactly what's going on yet, but that's my medium.
Hi, my name's Pat, and I have dabbled in the arts, in several arts. When I was younger, I majored in dance. I have done a lot of sketching and worked with pastels and acrylic paints. I've also done a lot of needlework. I currently do a lot of knitting and crocheting, and I write poetry.
Well, first of all, I'm here because I have two very good friends over there. The women's group, the Women Artists Group and Band is a great group. If anybody is interested, it's a meetup. It's wonderful. And anyway, I am kind of, I'm retired, but not retired, but for the money. I was a therapist, but I got into art therapy, and I loved it. I worked with abused children for many years, and so now I'm using intuitive art, and I'm helping people find their intuitive centers that they've lost. So many women come to me and they say that they're actually in tears. They weren't able to create as children because they were told they couldn't. So I'm just always been about creativity and healing. So that's my name.
We have a sir that just joined us back there. Hey, how are you? So there's some seats over here. You're coming in for the workshop, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, are you over 21?
I am.
Okay, are you sure? Okay, you're supposed to do that with a deep voice. Yes. Well, there's some refreshments there. Help yourselves. You guys aren't doing enough. You have to know, as an artist, I do not have a gift of hospitality, and we were trying to figure out refreshments, so it's all mixed up. But I will be personally offended if there's stuff left over. I would think it did not look appetizing enough, artistically appetizing. So please, please, please. So, yeah, eat all the strawberries, which is great. Well, we're so glad to hear a little bit more about you, but I am surprised you're the only musician here, that admitted musician. I'm sure there's other talents, but hopefully.
Would you say admitted?
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of new. It's kind of new that I'm just saying, okay, I am one.
Yeah, I'm sure there are other musically inclined people here. Well, so the first question I want to ask is, for our panelists and for those of you who would want to share, is how do you self-edit your work? Like, when do you consider it complete? Is it ever complete? Or when do you consider it successful? Like, so what is that process like for you, this editing and everything that goes along with it, and when do you consider yourself complete, successful?
Garrison Keillor said that he has never finished a piece of writing. Eventually he just gives up and turns it in. Garrison Keillor. And I think whatever kind of art we do, that is part of the whole experience, is getting past the perfectionism. And I'll tell you, just as we made this circle, I just felt this wave of sadness come over me because I did a lot of oil painting as a younger person, and the kind of encouragement I got was more like, well, that doesn't look quite enough like a tree, you know? And I sort of let that go. So maybe I gotta get my paints back out again. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
I don't know if this works with two of us, but yes, you do.
But thinking about the whole self-editing process, you do have to not be afraid to make mistakes and realize that oftentimes the mistakes are what actually bring the originality into the work. So often it's the thing you didn't expect that actually just sort of introduces itself to you. As a writer, I can say that every great sentence I've ever completed, I didn't know that that particular sentence was going to end like that. It just happened. It was that thing, I guess we talk about sometimes about a flow. You get in the flow and you let it happen. And you have to kind of get out of the way of it. And then there is that process where you actually do have to bring your critical mind into the process once you've let it all happen and begin to ask yourself, did you speak truly? Did you paint honestly? Did you actually create notes that mean something to you and that you can feel? And I think that it is the process of doing it over and over that in the long run creates the best work. We were talking about the artist Georges Rouault. And Rouault, his technique was he usually had about 40 paintings going at once. And many paintings would lay untouched for a couple years before we'd come back to them and know finally what to do with them. I just think that's kind of amazing. So, enough.
To see if this will work. Nope. Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
Did it work? Yeah. You can hear it? I can. How about that?
Nope.
Isn't that funny? Oh, there it is. Okay. Maybe I need to be like over here. I know.
Thing here.
Oh, there it is. So, as far as something being finished in the years or weeks, I think that that when you do something a lot, you can get into maybe a time where you can see a little bit more predictably how long something's going to take. However, like so many things in life, it's just another, I don't even know if I want to say parallel, but another expression of life is it can take so long to process a certain thing, to come up with a certain idea, to let that thing be born. And even, if you think about babies, human babies or animal babies when they're born, I mean, it takes this time for the seed, the gestation, then they're born, and then there's a grand variation of time until they can go and be on their own out into the world. And so, as far as something being done, sometimes you have to come back to it over and over again. For me, when I feel that something is done, is when I don't feel like there's so many changes that I need to make again. When I actually enjoy and am delighted by looking at it, that's when I know that it's done. And there are certain pieces that I'll work on that sometimes I work on a big easel, and sometimes I will bring pieces onto the floor and onto my lap even, and work on them as they're, larger. And there are some that, through the layers, when I know that they're not finished, they'll bring me to tears because of the love I feel like it's radiating back at me through the piece, and I'll touch it, and then continue adding until it's something that I want to look at, or something that I might want to hang on my own wall, And I'll try it in different places around the house, and then I'll see it in different lights, and I might think it's done, and I have to go back another day or two and add different parts of it. But usually it's when I feel delighted by it, and then I have to let go, knowing that, okay, now it's finished and I can put it out into the world, that people either will or will not resonate or jive with it, like it. And if they don't, so be it. And if they do, so be it. And for those who do appreciate, what it is, that it comes through and will inspire them. So it has to inspire me first before I feel that I can put it out to inspire anybody else.
Can I ask you a question? So, so you talk about almost this emotional relationship with what you've created. How hard does it then become to give it up for somebody else to own it now?
It is not hard at all. And it is not hard because of the relationship that I have developed with the process. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Khalil Gibran, poet and writer. And he wrote a work on children. And I don't know if this is working still. Oh, it's intermittent. Hello. He wrote a work on children, and I was phobic of having children. I had my first child when I was 32, and until then, from age 12 to 32, for that nice long span, I was phobic of having children. Until I learned, through the words of Khalil Gibran, your children are not your children. And if you ever want to look this up, it's more lengthy, and please do. Because anything that comes through you, you can apply this to, whether you have physical children or not. And so I developed that relationship with my own children, and I have that relationship with my artwork. That the artwork is something that I am a part of, I'm an ingredient of, bringing forth into the world. But, I mean, sure, it's my physical property until I sell it or give it away. But as far as giving it up to let it go out into the world, it's me meeting it and being responsible to it, and then putting it out as the child it's meant to be, to grow up out into the world. So I have to then cut the apron strings.
Is it that way for you too?
Not exactly. I think once I'm done with the piece, I'm kind of ready to let it go. Like I've had my experience with it, and I'm ready to pass it on and completely let go of it. In terms of editing, I'm glad that we're on the panel as visual artists, because our process is so different. I'm really, in the editing process, I edit as I'm creating the piece. So lots of times when I work, I make choices before I start working on the piece. So I'm making those editing choices along the way. And then by the time I'm actually creating the piece, I'm making less decisions in that space. So it's rarely that once I start a piece that I end up stopping because I hate it. It happens every once in a great while, but I've kind of edited before I've gone in and done the work. But I have started recently doing encaustic monoprinting, which is, it's working with a hot plate, and you apply encaustic sticks to it to create, it's basically a painting, but once you're done with it, you press the paper into it and do the transfer that way. And there's an example of it right here. And it's making me work more intuitively, and I think of it as sketching and being more free. But I find when I work in that space that lots of times things will be dumped in the garbage because I'm not doing like beautiful editing, before I hit the paper. I'm just letting whatever happens, and if it's done and I look at it and I'm like, ugh, I just let it go. So.
Well, it's so interesting. I'll answer the question, because as a literary artist, I know when I'm done when my sentence starts out with 20 words and it ends up with 2. And then it's like I keep, it gets denser and denser, or I have like 500 words and it's 10. I say that a bit facetiously, but sometimes I have a tendency to overwrite. And so I think if it's the simplicity is where, for my work, I find the beauty. And so when I am able to get it down to the barest minimum that it needs to say with the best words, the best verbs, the best adjectives that I can find, I feel that it's complete. And it's something that Amy said about you're feeling the love in your work coming back at you. When I do concept photography, it's done when I no longer see myself in it, which is so interesting because usually I do my own self-portraits. You know, I look, you know, you were so critical, right? Like, oh, my eye looks bigger on this side, I look fat, to the shade's bad, the lighting's bad, oh, I've got wrinkles, or oh, I didn't notice that. And so I notice all these things about myself in my work. But when I'm editing and just, you know, kind of cropping and trying to find different textures that I want to use for my pieces, there's always a moment where I go, oh, that's amazing. And it's not because it's me, it's because I've created a distance almost between the artwork and myself through the creative process, that it becomes its own thing, and I'm not seeing myself in it anymore. And it's odd, right? And then sometimes I go back to my pieces, and it's not me that I'm looking at. And I think it's kind of a fine line when you do self-portrait photography, especially with, you know, selfies and blah, 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 and we've become very narcissistic as a culture, you know, postmodern culture, postmodern Western culture, I would say even. But for me, it is a process of really seeing the art become its own. And when I can look at it and have an experience with it, it's quite fascinating. And we were talking beforehand, and I was saying with my writing, which for me, writing is a very spiritual process. It happens to be, I don't feel like I'm the writer, I feel like I'm the first reader. And so I think that's an odd juxtaposition, that I don't actually feel like I own the work or that I'm doing the work that I'm doing. That I just get to be a vessel or an instrument, and that it's coming from somewhere else, I guess. And is it Holly?
Yes.
You're shaking your head. Tell us, girl, what's going on? The musician.
I've just experienced it. I have a loud voice, by the way. I've experienced that a lot. The idea of trying to kind of defeat the ego and understand that.
It's on. Yeah, we hear you.
And understand that that perhaps creating would be a lot easier, and you have a huge burden taken off of your own
soul.
If if you were to just listen more than speak, and just to kind of allow yourself to be an instrument. I've used that word a lot in my own pleadings. Please let me be an instrument and not this, you know. I think that ego and art are something that are often connected, and it's a kind of a battle sometimes. And so I feel like what you're talking about is just the exact opposite of ego, and letting yourself just melt away and become kind of a channel for something greater than yourself.
It does seem like there's this messy kind of self-expression that oftentimes is the first thing that comes out, at least for me in writing. It's just like bleh, you know, and this is who I am. And actually the reality is usually that first thing actually isn't authentic. It oftentimes is, it's like shorthand, it's cliche. And it has to be, yeah, it's the junk. But it feels like I'm doing self-expression. But honestly, it isn't that self-expressive, and I have to wrestle it into the place where suddenly something real actually does come out. At least that's been my experience in writing, and especially like when I sit down to write poetry. I mean, the one thing I've learned is never depend on inspiration. That would be interesting. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about that, because especially in poetry, you think, or if you're writing songlyrics, oh, it should be inspired. and then suddenly something amazing is going to happen. And whatever I produce out of that level of inspiration is usually crap. It's just not good. But if I wrestle with it long enough, then suddenly something surprises me that I didn't know about myself or my subject. And then it's like I go, oh yeah, that's not me.
Right.
And yet it is me.
Right.
And that's like the paradox.
How many of you, just by show of hands, have kind of experienced that, like I would call it just now like a transcendent separation from your artwork? That's awesome. I think we're on the right path when that happens, right? When all of a sudden there's something larger than you happening, or I guess you could call it being in the zone or whatever, but you really do feel like you're encountering another entity almost, right? So,
Or the absence of the you.
the
Right?
absence
It's
of
like
the
Mark
you.
Buber talks about the I and the thou.
Mhm.
And you're the I when you're struggling sometimes, right? And the thou, or the bigger piece, or whatever you call it, thou, or you call it zone or flow, or you call it God or spirit. But it's, for me, like it's done when it's like you said, not me. Like I'll read stuff and I'll go, oh, I wrote that? Like I didn't write that, right? And
Yeah.
when I'm writing it, I'm editing or I'm moving stuff around, and that I can see myself in that.
Well, isn't that
That stuff is like not mine.
It's cool because we don't know the depths of our own heart and soul sometimes, and then things come out, and you're like, who is this person? Where did this come from? Or, I thought I was producing a ballad, and it's, something more syncopated. Like, what happened? Does that happen to you all, where you encounter, like, an art product or something that you've produced artistically, and it blows you away? Like, who am I? What is that?
Completely, yeah. So when you were talking about inspiration, I don't know if anybody else does this, but I kind of feel like I fill up my inspiration bank. And the way that I do that is by getting outside in nature, by going on hikes and having different experiences. And I always have my camera with me and always have a backpack, and I'm always picking up stuff. So I find when I get into the studio, it's about looking at what that inspiration that I've kind of stacked up, and now what can I do with it? So it's rare that I have an experience where I'm sitting there not kind of knowing where I'm going to go next. I'm just kind of like, when I can get out there, I'm taking in whatever I can so that when I have the time to work with it, that it's sitting there for me.
Great. So I have an interesting question, and I'm going to ask it because I think we've all experienced it. What is it like when people encounter your art and they come away with a completely different interpretation or feeling or response than you were expecting? How does that work when people misinterpret maybe what you feel are your overall narratives or your overall themes? How do you feel when people don't understand your intent or somehow don't even seem to be interested in your intent? So, and this is specifically, I'm transitioning a little bit to your relationship with your viewers, your patrons. Talk a little bit about that. And I don't want us to just go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, since I have a microphone.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I think when I was a younger artist, I was a little bit more offended when somebody didn't like my work or just like walk past it. But as I've gotten older, it kind of amuses me now, I think. And I've noticed more because my work is, I've gotten to the point where I've created something that's really unique, and most of the time somebody hasn't seen something like it. So either somebody's like, I totally love this, or they look at it and they hate it, but they've a lot of times said, I've never seen anything like it. So I feel like at least if they felt something, I feel like I did my job, even if they liked it or they didn't like it. So, and I've also kind of, I think I said this before, like, I'm not pizza, like, not everybody's gonna like me. So I gotta kind of get over that.
Any reaction's better than indifference.
Exactly.
Any reaction is better than
Any reaction is better than indifference, yeah. Thanks, Jackson.
Well, and I mean, some people are allergic to pizza. Some people have to have their pizza without cheese. I mean, they're all
Or gluten-free.
But they're
still eating it.
Yeah, or not at all. I mean, they might be, having like going into what is it? Anaphylactic shock. Yeah. Anaphylactic shock. I used to be married to a nurse. It's been a while. So, let's see. What's the reaction to if people like things or not? If things resonate or not? I believe, well, first of all, I don't believe that everybody has to like what I do or like what everyone else does, and thankfully so, because it's such a release of burden to think that what I produce needs to please everyone. I think
that there are so many people on the planet. I am only one of them, and I am so
different.
And I've been different places, both physically in the world, in different countries. I've been in
different places
in my heart.
That each and every one of
you,
you have different lineage, different likes, dislikes. I mean, on and on. How could you possibly all
love everything that I make? And sometimes I don't even like what I make. So
I think that it's
a relief to understand that I don't have to please everyone.
For me, yeah. There was one thing I wanted
to say about just to go back for a second, the last comment about inspiration. There's a quote by Pablo
Picasso, and I don't know if maybe I should trade at this point.
Here, use both of them. It's like a press conference.
This is fun. It's like I get to be like one of my kids. So the quote by Pablo Picasso is, "Inspiration will find you, but it has to find you working." So, you gotta have the engines humming. You gotta actually be up moving around, not just sitting there waiting for it to hit you as you wake up and you're drinking your coffee. You gotta get up and move around and start pulling the tools out. So
you can have two now. I feel like I'm stuffing
That's too intimidating.
face with M&Ms or something.
It's so true that the waiting game to start just doesn't produce anything. I've heard someone say before that the first tip to being a writer is learning to put your butt in the chair. Because no writing will happen until you do that. Just like no painting will happen until you actually get your materials set out and your brushes ready. The profound always follows the mundane. You have to do the ritual. You have to enact the work, and that opens you, I think, for that moment when something else happens. And I think sometimes as artists, it's kind of about allowing that something to shine through. It's like taking the familiar of something that's so familiar and letting it actually be seen by people. Because we constantly look and we rarely see. And I think the great gift that artists have provided for me in my life is they've taught me how to see, how to slow down, how to pay attention. Any film buffs in the room? Anybody know the work of Andrei Tarkovsky, Russian filmmaker? Which makes you sound like you're really smart if you are referring to Russian filmmakers, right? But seriously, I mean, these amazing artistic films, but not to everybody's pleasure, because they're not like a typical Hollywood movie. And part of that is because he has long, slow takes where he will focus on an item, an object, and just stay focused on it. And we were talking about this in class the other night, that what happens when you look at something long enough? What's the first reaction you feel? Boredom, right? But he says if you stay with it, and force people to keep looking, and as a filmmaker you can kind of do that. You know, if it's a picture, it's like, yeah, okay, then you move on. But the filmmaker can do that, and I think sometimes art can do that too by the power of surprise. You can make somebody look, and on the other side of boredom, what happens? You actually begin to see. You actually see. Because most of the time, we don't actually see.
You know, I love that because
when we talk about art being complete or successful or others understanding our intent, I don't ever have that problem of people understanding my intent with my work because it's so conceptual, it's so abstract. But one of the things I've come to embrace as an artist, and I hear this a lot, literary art as well as visual art, is I know there's something there, but I don't know what it is. And so my goal kind of is not necessarily to have people walk away with an impression or a sense of the narrative, but that if they, I want to get, it's a razor's edge, right, of alienating your viewer. But there's also a point where people are intrigued, they're embraced by the art. And for me, my goal is to encourage the viewer to create a space, to ponder, to think, I wonder what she's trying to say, why is she trying to say it this way? And I gotta admit, it used to be kind of hurtful, like, you know, people, I don't understand it, what does this mean? But I realized that is successful. If people can look at a piece, listen to a piece, and they go, there's something going on, but I don't know what it is. And so I think that creating that space, that place where people can digest, and again, not to alienate, but to cause them to stop, feel it, look, and listen, that, I think I would consider my work successful. And that's something actually I wanted to address specifically to you, Amy, because the kind of intuitional painting that you do, people don't know, like they're not painting with an end game in mind. They don't know what they're doing. And I'm kind of curious how you help the people that you work with navigate through that process of having this amorphous experience, this amorphous thing that, you know, that they may not necessarily know how to name it or see it even. Like, what's that like in intuitional painting?
So when, in your question, are you asking about the artwork that I create and then put out as a professional artist, or if I'm leading people in a group through a workshop?
Well, I'm just saying in general, if it's your own personal experience or personal experience that you've guided people through where it's this thing of they don't know what they're doing, but they know it's something. Okay. You don't know what you're doing, but you know it's something. Uh-huh. Like, what is involved in that process?
Okay. So, I think I'm just going to trade you, and I'm not going to double fist.
Okay, so I'll start with myself personally, because that's where all of this came from before I could teach someone else to do it, is as soon as I come together and there are materials, you know, out wherever I'm working, and then I add myself as the piece to join in with the materials, when I pick them up, sometimes I will start to get into a place where maybe my thoughts are flowing freely, and I'll make marks, and whatever's coming up the most, I will concentrate on that, almost as a meditation. So for example, this one here in the middle with the red, it's a detail of something larger. And there were 3 paintings for something I really needed to learn, which is a quote by Lao Tzu, "Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished." And there's another print of the first one. I think this was the second, and then there's a third. And so when I would paint, every stroke that I would make, if I moved to charcoal or Sharpie or anything else in it, everything that I would do was a physical act of meditation with the paints with it. And I wrote it in Sharpie on a piece of paper and taped it up on my easel. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. And I painted that in. It's infused within. And I did that intending only to do one painting with that, but apparently it needed to work through me in 3 paintings, and maybe more. So there's with that title 1, 2, and 3. And so those become a meditation, for me. When I'm leading, and it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes I just smear it around, and if I show up and the capital IT it isn't coming through me, then what I do is I recognize right now isn't the right time.
And so
I will, if it's just not coming and I'm showing up, then I will let it go and go on to something else. I have other things to do too, like laundry and dinner and my kids and courage tribe stuff and just things I enjoy, going for a walk or whatever. And I believe fully in art, in life, in all things that we are not machines, and our art is not a machine either. I mean, I see one over here, this beautiful sculpture up above, and I wonder if it moves because I know that artist and it usually moves. So in that case, it is a machine, but the process of making the art and the person making that is not a machine. And so the production isn't going to happen, always right on time. And sometimes the machine, even as machines or people, we need to be oiled and re-inspired and stuff. So,
cool. Thank you for that, Lisa. I know
You got some stuff to share with us in terms of this art being what it wants to be, and what do you see when you're creating? Where does the art take you in the process?
Gosh, that's actually a tough one. I guess it's maybe taking me back sometimes when I'm working, especially with objects. They're taking me back to the place that I was at when I'm working with them. Yeah, it's transporting me through the pieces that I'm working with.
Well, and as a mixed media artist, what kinds of things attract you to select them, I guess? It's probably, Mr. Editor, you can help me with my grammar there.
Let me ask this question. Let me try that question. Because my question is, you're talking about how one of the things that really feeds you is nature. You go to nature and you build a fund of inspiration. I love that whole concept. That's really good. So you bring that now into the studio in front of a blank canvas. And I know part of what happens is mystery, but there's a lot that's intentional. Talk about that. Did that help at all, or that make it even worse?
It did. I guess I'm showing up and I'm looking at what I have, and I think my brain just starts going like, oh, that should go with that, and let's try this here. And my husband's here. He knows, I might collect an entire bag of things that he's transported back for me. And I'll work with them and keep looking at them on the canvas, and not everything works. It's just like, oh, will this go? Will this go? And eventually it's like, oh, it's singing to me. So I guess the objects are talking to me, and as I'm moving them about, and sometimes I'll look at if I'm working with a piece that has photography and the found object in it, I'm looking at the found object and looking through the photographs that I've taken and trying to see what goes together. Even though they're from the same place, they don't always work together. So it's finding that balance of who belongs with who. It's matchmaking.
Lisa, I love your work. Are there pieces that you keep for yourself, that you create? Because you're an artisan. I'm an artist, you're an artisan, and S-A-N, and I make that distinction because you have a creative space. You have many pieces that are offered to the public. And you actually expose your creative process to others, whereas at me, I'm in my bathroom. Or on the kitchen floor, taking pictures, and, whether I put it out there or not, it's not my livelihood whatever. And so, yeah, yeah.
So, say that again?
I don't even know where it's going. I just got a flashback to a bathroom photo shoot. Oh my gosh!
You asked me if I kept anything. I went into the bathroom with you and I was like stuck there. Why are you working?
It's like I'm gonna move the kitchen table.
So I actually haven't intentionally kept a lot of pieces.
Bathroom lighting, by the way, it's not
okay.
Private acts. It's the lighting. Good lighting.
So I haven't kept a lot of pieces. I think the one that maybe is the most meaningful to me that I've kept was the one that got into the biennial, and the way that that piece showed up to me was pretty magical too. It was just a close-up of a burnt, I think it maybe was an alligator juniper in Arizona. If you would have looked at the photograph, you wouldn't have cared about it. It wouldn't have meant anything to you. And I decided to print it really, really big and to take the shapes out of it. And the printer didn't work. And it gave me colors that I didn't expect from it. So it kind of informed where I went with that body of work. So I've kind of kept that one as my little gem.
Accident.
Yeah.
How much of your work is accident? I mean, when you look at the final result, you go, I never intended that exactly, but it just happened.
A lot happens. A lot happens by. I don't know if accident's the right word, but another one isn't coming in instead.
Unintentional mark, maybe, or not a mark you like. Yes,
There are many things
that I don't intend to happen.
And
I stay
with it until it grows up enough that it's like enough of the, when you talk about how you put everything out and you feel like it's not you until the very end. Well, what I was thinking about is that it's a lot of things that you've filtered, and that is the junk, and that, you know, the toxins even that you are dispelling and purging from you at first. And then you sift through what's been given out, and I love your curation word, that you say that you're a curator, and I hear you talk, and you're curating what you bring back from the forest that's through you and through your hands. And then, you know, when something sings back at you, you know, it made me think of almost a tuning fork. You know, you're bringing things together and it's coming back, and then you say, okay, that's it. So you're doing the work of harmonizing. And I also was listening to you talk about that sometimes things that you collect from the same place don't always go together, that they need to be used elsewhere. And I think, of course, because you need nature in diversity, or diversity in nature, I mean to say. And so for things they need to be moved from over here to over here and put together that way, and you're doing that. You're the one doing that. And so,
I don't believe really that things are happening necessarily by accident.
Unless it's a splatter or a spill. And if that happens, I treat that as, okay, well, that's just something as if, you know, we're running out the door and my son decides to spill milk on the carpet, and
you know, that's not fun.
But you have to deal with that spill too. So if there's a spill, especially on an area
that maybe
I particularly liked, there are a lot of lessons in letting go, because maybe I spent all this time doing this one section, and then you know, I got careless, and now there's a big drip down it or something like that, and then I think, well, I
have to roll with that. It's my job
to roll with what
comes. I'm not in complete
control.
Did you have something, Martin, that you wanted to contribute?
Yeah, a couple things. One, I have to confess, I'm a former art teacher, and so two things I would say. One is, as an artist, the things that were unsuccessful, the things that I tried to do things with that the piece didn't really want to do. So as a sculptor, it's not an accident. If this is where the piece wants to go and I don't really follow that or honor, you know, I have to be intuitive to the stone or to the bronze or to whatever, because I can push it, but that's when I really, you know, I have to go with my intuition on what feels right about it as opposed to saying, no, that's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But listening to the piece as opposed to listening to, you know, no, I have to make it this way. No, the piece will decide whether it's going to do that or not.
And the
thing I love most about that is that we become submitted artists. I find that in my own work when I finally just stop forcing it. And there's something spiritual, there's something beautiful, there's something redeeming about being an artist when you let go, when you say, I am not going to force it. I'm going to see what happens. Whereas that, I'm kind of a planner by profession, and, I've got everything laid out. And when I let it go, and that's a difficult process, the creative process of letting go. But when I do, I actually feel like, wow, like I can breathe a little bit. You all know what I'm talking about?
Right, then the second thing I would say is that the original question was, how do you know what you've done, or when are you finished? And as an art teacher, I would say, are you making decoration, or are you trying to make something that says something? And there's nothing wrong with decoration if that's what you're going for. But if you're trying to make feeling, or if you're trying to make it emotion, if you're trying to make it really speak something, well, it's done when it says what you want it to say. And 90% of my process is trying to figure out what I want to say. Not the work will work its way out, but what am I trying to say? What is it that that I'm compelled to make, or what is it I'm compelled to form? That's the struggle for me is, okay, I got this image in my brain. What is it saying, or what do I want it to say?
Have you often been surprised by the message when you've completed?
I'd say I'm more of a process guy. I really like the process, the carving, the sculpting, the forming it. The message when it's done, I'm done with it, frankly. So.
I'm learning myself to enjoy the process. Usually I just want it to be done. Yeah. And it's like you gotta let it just go. And we've been talking about this experience, and I just want to ask one last question, and answer it the way you would like to answer it, and then we'll just kind of end this and just have some, fellowship and time together. What has been your most, or one of, or I won't even say one of, can you share with us a cathartic experience that you've had with your art? And, I don't want to ask you to share something you're uncomfortable with, but I just want to really have all of us share amongst each other and honor the power of the creative process and how that affects us as artists, as individuals, and just as people who, and I will say this, and made in the image of God, that there's something in us that is immaterial that we often don't honor in the way that we should. And so, your most cathartic, most, transformative. Hey, that's our word, artist transformation. Can you share with us your most transformative experience? And I'll just start out because I've got the mic and I better say it before I lose my nerve. So I mentioned I was writing this narrative of being
the voice of Eve
in the Garden of Creation, and it took me 6 years to write this manuscript. And when I first started it, I was living in a ministry with teen moms and their kids, and just seeing life through their eyes. I'm not a parent, nor am I a teenager. But I went to a cafe, and cafes are what they are. They're busy, people are around you, people are working, people are just having coffee, people are, just getting warm or whatever. And I was, in the zone. And if you know the story of Adam and Eve, there were two trees in the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and the tree of, the tree of life, tree of knowledge of good and evil. Okay. And I'll try to get that right, seeing on the story. And, Adam and Eve were commanded they could eat everything from the garden, eat from everything of the garden except for this one tree. And I'm writing, trying to position myself as Eve, and this sentence came out of me. Everything means nothing if I can't have that one thing. Everything means nothing if I can't have that one thing. And when I finished typing the last word, I lost it. I mean, hysterical tears,
the cafe that I was in, I distinctly remember going into the single toilet bathroom, and I was on the floor of a public bathroom bawling my eyes out because it brought something out of me of, kind of living within boundaries in my own life and, kind of with my professional choices and choices to leave and being on a budget, all that kind of stuff. And it was this thing of, I realized there was such rebellion that was in my soul that even we as Americans, we want. We are so wealthy, we have so many things, but, I just felt so spoiled and entitled. But it was this thing of everything means nothing if I can't have that one thing. And that was probably easily 7 or 8 years ago, but it is the one time because, I'm in a public bathroom for 15 minutes and I even left my laptop on the table, on the floor in fetal position, with my tears running down me into the drain on the floor. But I think that was the moment when I realized that there is healing and transformation that can happen. And that experience, when I think about it, I start to go, when I want to have the things that I want, that I am rich. I have more than I need. And just because that one thing is not available, or I can't do it, I can't buy that plane ticket, I can't buy those shoes, that I have so much to be thankful for. And allow me, I think back to that time every now and then, and I want to embrace just the now, I guess. That's all I can say, but everything means nothing if I can't have that one thing. That was my powerful experience with words. So.
Sadly, none of my stories have anything to do with restrooms.
I like the bathroom, don't I? I've been talking about lighting on the floor.
There's always one.
Yeah.
So it's accessible.
Yeah.
It's very accessible.
Yeah. So, can I have permission to take the question just a little bit different direction? Rather than talking about the process of creation, I would like to talk about the process of reception. What has happened to me by looking at art?
Thank you.
Because art has, because I don't think I'm a great artist, and yet what great artists give me is the ability to see my world and myself in a completely different way. I mean, I'm a real student of art history, and by the way, I love what you've done here by taking these like iconic pieces, which they can just become wallpaper to us, right? Because they're so familiar, and you playfully brought them back to life, and I get to see them in a fresh way. So thank you for that. And especially I think of that because I look across at, just 2 quick experiences I'll talk about, no, 3, but they'll be really quick, I promise. One is Van Gogh's The Starry Night. Has anybody actually had the opportunity to stand in front of the actual painting? Oh my gosh. The color and the power, and I couldn't help when I wrote a chapter about that piece in my book, I couldn't help but think about what he must have been feeling and experiencing to have created that. To see this churning sky that is just so mystical and glorious, and he saw something in the created world and the stars that I never would have seen, except that he gave me the gift of seeing it, Or I think of being in Houston at the Rothko Chapel. Anybody been to Rothko Chapel in Houston? Yeah. In typical Mark Rothko style, it's very simple, very straightforward. It's a little chapel that has paintings which are basically different shades of black, which right away, even that, I got to think about the different shades of black and the colors that are hidden within black. And it's this incredible meditational space that is set up as kind of a non-denominational place for people to go and meditate and pray. And I just had such a powerful experience there. And I know others who've been there and have had the same kind of thing. And it's just because, in this case, that art tells me something so simple and so primal about the mystery of my own existence, and yet gives me this hope that there's something more beyond that. And then lastly, I think of standing in front of one of Jackson Pollock's paintings at the the Museum of Modern Art. And it's, Rothko, Pollock, it looks like skeins of color, and it looks so much about chance. And yet, within all that chance and disorder, there is lovely rhythm and beauty and meaning. And to me, that, standing in front of that and just being moved by the fact that in the chaos and disorder, there is an order that shines through. Because ultimately, for me, that's what art is about. It's whether it be realism or abstraction, it's something beyond shining through that invests that with something of meaning and a revelatory kind of characteristic. And that's what touches me.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go on that long.
No, that was great. That's wonderful.
I would say every piece that I do transforms me.
Okay.
There is a series that I wouldn't ever present them, as being related, and yet they are so related, that came over the course of years. One that was so healing.
Healing. And it takes time
For
healing to happen.
And I didn't even know maybe how much I needed it. And I know that you had said something about people looking at your work and saying, or work at all, and saying, I know there's something there, but I don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. Well, that was what was in my heart. There's this thing I have to get out of me that I don't know what it is, and I didn't know how to do it. And so over time, first of all, I became an artist and accepted that to call my own self one. And I was working on a piece after my second child was born, and I created something
intuitively that I had no idea
what it was going to
become until I started emerging from it. I could start to see myself. I was like, well, that shapes my hair. Look at that. That shapes my eyes or my arms. And pretty soon,
I could even see the leg bend in the way that I was facing
like a mirror. And there were all these pieces
that I was able to come to it later when I came and looked at it the next day.
There was this these shapes in the top of wind, and then it looked almost like fields of cultivation. It was all very abstract and repetitive, and mixed media. There were fields of cultivation. There was water and waves. And there was me in the center of it all.
And there was this radiation of lines coming out from my heart, which was me as an artist, I felt. And then there was this part that ended up coming back and playing again through and through throughout the years. This bottom left-hand corner, and it was very chaotic and it was very repetitive, like hieroglyphics even. And
I boxed
in these two kind of swirly areas, and I thought, that's ancestral. It was later. That's ancestral. That's like down in the bedrocks of who I am in my family line. And then later, there was, I was creating the very beginnings, and it's something that's in progress, but an online course for the Courage Tribe. And I was going to incorporate various chakras. And so I kind of did this outline, and then I wanted to do it. It's just for the root chakra. And I don't know how much any of you here know about that, but it is something that does deal with security and ancestry and roots, foundation. And so I went through, and I never limit my palette. That's like unheard of for me to do, but I thought, okay, for this, I'm going to try this exercise where I would take the color associated with the chakra, and I would invite people, so first myself as my guinea pig, to have that color red, and then black, and then white. And
And so I just have plain paper, and first I'm not drawn to black as much in my artwork, and so I did all my red, and I'm scribbling around with the paintbrush, and then I'm adding white, and I'm seeing the interplay, and I'm like, okay, well I have this black left, right? And I do this piece, and it ends up in this lower left-hand corner, and it's messy, and I start looking, and I was like, that feels ancestral, and then I pull this other one back later, and this is years. And then another several months goes by, and I'd had a painting, and I was running out of canvases. So I thought, well, this painting never got finished. Well, I'm going to pull it out and just start playing on it. So I started playing on it, and before that happened, I had some things kind of going on that I knew were family line things. And I ended up going to a dance. It was a free dance where essentially it's doing with your body like I would do intuitively. You can move any way you want, and it's it's a safe group. You can go and do this, and I thought, I'm going to go to dance. And I did, and it was like I was pulling up and cleaning house, getting rid of this ancestral garbage. And the thing, you can ring a little bell if you have an epiphany, and mine was, I let go of ancestral garbage. I am born anew. And so I came home after that dance, and I was painting, on this old panel of mine, and came out, and there was this joyous person up here. So it was kind of almost cartoony, abstract, but it was a self-portrait essentially. I mean, it was yellow and outlined, and I don't remember what color. It doesn't look like me, but then there was this cleaned up, buoyant that I knew was this lower left-hand corner again. None of the times intended, every time transformational. So that's artist transformation. I feel. Yeah.
So my most transformative experience with art is probably when I used art as therapy for myself. Back in 2011, my aunt passed away. Oh, I'm gonna try not to cry. So anyway, I'm gonna make my mom cry too.
And this is one of my favorite pieces too. So tell me a story.
Okay. Sorry, I'm crying.
That's okay.
It's good. Tears are good.
I had never had anybody really important die in my life, and I didn't know how to deal with it.
So I had to take that crap into the studio because I didn't know what else to do. And
At the same time, I don't even think my mom knew. I was kind of like trying to,
she was dealing with her own
stuff that I don't think she realized what I was doing, but just by talking about my aunt and asking her questions, and my aunt passed away from, I think, like 5 different types of cancer. So I'm talking to her, and she tells me this story about how when they were little, they lived in Las Vegas, and when my aunt was probably 18 months old, they watched
nuclear bomb testings happen in that area in Las Vegas. Maybe
50 miles from there.
And
Nuclear bombs, right? Nuclear bombs?
Mm-hmm.
So
that just sent me off on this path of going into the studio and taking that idea and running with it. And so I did things like research that time period, and there were toys that were made for children back then that had radioactive material in them that were sold, and so once I researched that, I found this beautiful primary color palette that they used for
the kids' toys, and I decided to use
that
in my work.
And I took those colors and images of cancer and just started playing in the studio. I didn't have a show that I was going to do. It was just taking those ideas and working with the materials I had and experimenting and processing that experience through art. And I got so much out of that in terms of new ideas that I'd never used before. I had never dipped a photograph in wax and pulled it out and sculpted it. I hadn't
worked three-dimensionally that way. I'd always worked flat, and I was doing all these different shapes with dipped photographs and finding a whole new body of work. And I really believe, like, my aunt gave that to me. I couldn't have gotten there without processing that whole experience. And it was painful to go through, but I feel like I'm still working with the gifts that I was given. And when I showed that work, it's probably the most powerful work that I've done. And I have a hard time showing it because people talk to me the entire time about their experiences with cancer. And I want to honor that, but at the same time, I feel like I can't live in that world of people always wanting to talk to me about cancer. So after I did that body of work, I haven't really worked with it again because it is really painful, and I feel like it's getting more negative, and I want to live in a more positive space when I'm creating my art. And it's kind of dark now, but this piece right here is my aunt when, I don't know how old she was, but she's basically sitting in a sea of cancer. That's her background there. And it's a photograph with cancer behind her, and then it has clear wax over that, and then a field of white wax underneath it. That's kind of reminds me of, like, after a nuclear bomb, like the white, I'm not using the right words, but the snow. So anyway, so say something happy after that,
Thank
Marie,
you for sharing
please.
that sweet, sweet, sweet story. Well, I think that, you so beautifully and vulnerably, and thank you for that, have helped us to just explore how art is transformative for us as individuals. And I'm thinking, Terry, the lecture you gave a couple days ago, and it was the first thing you said, and I actually just put it up on my Facebook, is art is probably the most important thing that has the ability to change our culture. Am I saying that right? Art has the power to change our culture.
Unlike probably more than any other thing.
Art more than any other thing has the power to change our culture because, if I preach at you or, you see something on television that has a message, you can tune it out, you can turn it off. But with art, it allows people to see through another person's eyes. It's disarming because the interpretations vary. And I think that the thing that I really want to pick up on is that art is probably the thing that can transform a culture, but it's the thing that transforms us. And as we each are transformed, we're transforming our personal spheres, the widening spheres, and that's how it transforms a culture. It doesn't set out to transform the masses all at once with one broad stroke. It transforms each person, from the artist to the viewer to the next viewer and the next viewer. And it's an awesome just responsibility and gift to be an artist, to have the submission, I keep using that word, to submit ourselves to something that will resonate and reverberate and have impact one pair of eyeballs at a time. And yeah, I just want to celebrate that in each and every one of you around this table and honor that and bless you as you go forward in the creative process, as you encourage others in the creative process, as you discover new things about yourself through art. And that I just kind of want to, I guess my hope at the end of the night is that we all feel humbled and sober about the charge that we have as artists, and that we continually surrender to the process, and that we grow the courage to continue to share these things even to the point when they make us uncomfortable, but that we see the art as a way to love people. And yeah, so art is transformation.
Any questions, comments, sharings anybody want to have, or you just want to eat up all the food before we go?
Could I give an invitation? Sure. So I wanted to give an invitation to you all. I mentioned a little bit in addition to being an artist. Let's make sure this is still.
Oh, maybe I'm in the way. Go ahead.
I don't know.
That I have an organization, a social movement called the Courage Tribe. And there is, I've started this and then I had to press pause for over a year until I could get my son into kindergarten because I couldn't have both big ventures all at once. And so he just got into kindergarten, and so now it's kind of coming up and alive again. There's a workshop, if anybody is interested, called Allow, Create, Flow that I've designed. And this wonderful woman, Vicki, here you heard her talk a little bit about intuitive painting when it was her turn. We actually did a little co-developing, a lot of co-developing, and we have led this together, and then I have led it since, and she does some intuitive painting as well. So she's a lovely woman to talk to right here. But this particular one I'm doing on October 15th, it includes little bits of, it's a mind, body, soul approach to courageous, wholehearted interdependence within our lives so that then we can radiate that out and echo that out into our spheres and in our lives. And so there's a bit of intuitive painting, there's discussion, a little bit of lecture, and bits of yoga that's very, very gentle, that's woven throughout, and some journaling that goes through. So there's information over next to the t-shirts and things like that that talk about the Courage Tribe. And if anyone's interested, let me know.
Why don't we finish out then? Tell us what you've got coming on your plate, Lisa, what you're working on, or invitation as well. Can you share that?
Okay, so I'm teaching classes in October and November, so if anybody's interested in learning how to do encaustic collage or encaustic painting, I have 4 classes this session, and I also, I'll be showing at the Wilds in November. If anybody has, if you haven't heard of the Wilds, it's another creative space. Theirs is a little bit different. It's not open with retail hours like the Workhouse is, but they bring a lot of different creatives together in terms of designers, artists, and the like, and they also offer classes. So I'll have a show there, and I also show work at the Lubismeyer Gallery in town. If you've never been there, I highly recommend that you go. And I'm not just plugging my work. I just love the work of the twin artists that are there. They're super intriguing, and if you haven't met them in town, I definitely encourage you to do so.
Carrie?
I'm just writing books. That's what I do. Can I just say something else? Just this was some of what we've been talking about here. Dostoevsky said, "Beauty will save the world." And that, I think, is the challenge for all of us. That is ultimately what transformation is about bringing beauty into the world. And that makes all the difference. And Marie's going to have an exhibit, so tell us about that.
Oh, yeah.
It's her first show.
Yeah, I know she wasn't going to say anything, so
I wasn't.
I'm going to make her say something about it.
Thank you for remembering, Terry.
Which is so funny because I always say every time I create a piece of work, I think it's my last. So I've never really done much by way of promotion because I'm scared of the pressure of having to produce. So it's like, oh no, I just have fun with it. But yes, for those of you who are local, you're in Redmond, but you're finding your way around Bonta Scoop Shop, the only gelato exclusive shop here in Bend downtown. Next Friday, on First Friday, I'm going to be showcasing my images there, and they will be hanging up for 2 months. But I will be there next Friday night during Art Walk to just welcome people to the gelato shop. And I love gelato, Italian, anything Italian, the drink, eat, drive, smell, I love it. So yeah, I'm gonna have a show that is opening up October 6th. And then there's this, and speaking of by way of promotion, anything you see around here is available for sale. We are able to receive your purchase, but specifically in the back when you came in, there are 2 artist tables Books of Terry's are there. Excellent gift books, excellent Christmas presents, birthday presents, just because presents. I bought 2 of them, and if you don't buy the 2 that I like, I'm gonna buy them. So hurry up and take a pic. Amy, she has these lovely, she gave me this, and I got chills when I put it on. She'll tell you about it. The Courage Tribe, these tags, they're amazing. Like, it was something about it that was kinetic. When she gave it to me, oh my God, I just got chills. She's selling those along with shirts and information about her workshop and other sundries. And then Lisa is featured here, as I mentioned. Sue's walking the door, all of her art in the corner, but she has information about her classes that are coming up, and some cards as well. And yeah, feel free to browse, connect with us. This is the official conclusion, but we have some minutes to hang out and talk and fellowship and, have some more wine. It's open. I'm gonna have to pour it down the drain. I don't want you to overindulge, but please, if you have a designated driver, drink up.
I'm ready to drink now.
Yeah, go for it. Thank you.
I had seltzer or whatever that delicious fruit concoction was, but let's have wine.
Thank you all for coming and eavesdropping on our conversation. And have a great weekend. And I'll see you next Friday or October 15th or at a class or at the next book launch. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm so glad you came. You were front row. You were front row. Front row seated. Oh, good. Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you came. Yeah, I'm so glad you came. We could only scratch the surface, though. Hey there. I'm so glad you came. Let me just turn this off.